This is my ranking of grand strategy war games that I've played, based purely on my personal experience. Each one is placed from masterpiece to trash, depending on how deep the strategic systems are, how well diplomacy and warfare interact, and how engaging long-term empire management feels. Let's get straight into the list. Hearts of Iron IV is a World War II grand strategy game where I controlled an entire nation and guided its military, industry, politics, and research through years of global conflict. Beginning before the war, I managed factory production, developed new weapons, expanded infrastructure, and decided which technologies deserved attention. Military campaigns depended heavily on preparation, since armies, aircraft, and warships required long-term planning and resources. Diplomacy and ideology also shaped the world, with countries forming alliances, creating rival factions, and changing the course of history in unexpected ways. Every decision created ripple effects across the globe, leading to alternate outcomes that looked very different from real events. Learning all its systems took time, but the depth of strategy kept each campaign interesting. This lands in the great tier. Europa Universalis IV is a grand strategy game where I guided a nation through centuries of politics, warfare, trade, diplomacy, and expansion. Starting as a small kingdom or a major power, I had to manage technology, maintain stability, build alliances, and carefully decide how to spend limited monarch points. Every choice carried consequences, whether I was improving my economy, expanding through conquest, or securing powerful diplomatic partners. I spent a lot of time balancing military strength with long-term growth because falling behind in any area could create serious problems later. Different nations offered completely different challenges, which made each campaign feel unique. Watching a small state grow into a major empire through careful planning was always satisfying, while unexpected wars and shifting alliances constantly changed my plans. This belongs in the excellent tier. Imperator Rome put me in charge of an ancient nation where expanding territory was only part of the challenge. While growing my territory was important, much of my time was spent dealing with ambitious nobles, powerful families, and political factions that constantly demanded influence. As Rome, a monarchy or a tribal nation, I had to balance the needs of different groups while managing laws, trade, population growth, religion, and infrastructure. Wars required careful planning because terrain, supply limits, fortresses, army composition, and battle tactics all affected the outcome. I also expanded my economy, developed provinces, and handled rebellions that could appear when parts of the population became unhappy. The political systems were interesting, but some areas lacked depth, placing this in the good tier. Decisive campaigns Barbarossa had me balancing military operations and political decisions during the German invasion of the Soviet Union, where battlefield success depended on much more than moving units across the map. While moving divisions, creating encirclements, and managing attacks across the front, I was also handling relationships with senior commanders and making political decisions that could affect the entire campaign. I constantly had to choose where to spend limited political points, whether on logistics, personnel issues, propaganda efforts, or other important matters. The card-driven mechanics and simultaneous turns kept operations moving smoothly, while detailed staff reports helped me understand what was happening across the war. Small decisions often created major consequences later, making every turn feel important. The role-playing systems added a layer rarely seen in war games, placing this in the excellent tier. Hearts of Iron III began years before the fighting reached its peak, with me shaping a nation's military, economy, diplomacy, and technological development long before armies started clashing across the world. Every decision influenced the future, whether I was expanding industrial capacity, researching new equipment, appointing government officials, or preparing divisions for upcoming campaigns. The scale was massive, with thousands of provinces creating wide fronts where supply lines, positioning, and coordination mattered as much as battlefield victories. I could hand responsibilities to AI-controlled headquarters or take direct control of operations myself, depending on how much detail I wanted to handle. Building a successful war machine required patience and long-term planning, since mistakes could take years to correct. Its depth was remarkable, but the complexity and slower pace place it in the good tier. Field of Glory empires dropped me into the ancient Mediterranean at a time when rising kingdoms, rival tribes, and major powers were all competing for territory and influence. Expanding my nation involved much more than winning wars, because I also had to develop provinces, manage population groups, construct buildings, secure resources, and maintain a stable economy. Different nations played very differently, with some relying on manpower, others on trade, and others on unique military advantages. Building armies depended on the regions I controlled, which made territorial expansion important for both economic and military growth. Trade networks helped support development, while cultural progress and infrastructure shaped the long-term strength of my empire. Although diplomacy sometimes felt unpredictable, watching a small state grow into a regional power kept campaigns engaging. That leaves it in the good tier. Shadow Empire started with a tiny regime struggling to survive on a ruined planet, and from there I had to rebuild industry, expand territory, and create the systems needed to support a growing nation. Progress depended on much more than military strength because resources, infrastructure, administration, and logistics all worked together behind the scenes. I spent a lot of time improving transport networks and supply routes, since even powerful armies could become ineffective if equipment and fuel failed to reach the front. Research opened access to new technologies, allowing me to develop advanced vehicles, aircraft, and military capabilities suited to the world's conditions. Every planet generated a different challenge, with unique geography, resources, factions, and environmental obstacles shaping the campaign. Its outstanding mix of logistics, warfare, nation-building, and replayability earns a spot in the excellent tier. Strategic Command World War I let me guide an entire nation through the First World War, where success depended on balancing military operations, research, diplomacy, production, and national morale. Rather than focusing on individual battles, I spent most of my time deciding where to commit resources and how to support long-term war efforts across multiple fronts. Artillery bombardments, trench assaults, naval blockades, submarine campaigns, and technological development all played important roles in shaping the conflict. Every offensive came with heavy costs, which captured the slow and exhausting nature of the war. Military production points were used for nearly everything, forcing me to choose between reinforcing armies, funding research, influencing neutral countries, or expanding my forces. Watching strategic decisions reshape the course of the war kept every campaign engaging, placing it in the great tier. World warfare and economics handed me control of a modern nation where nearly every political, economic, and military decision could affect the country's future. I spent much of my time balancing budgets, managing debt, adjusting tax policies, and deciding how much funding different sectors such as healthcare, education, and welfare would receive. Diplomacy also played a major role, allowing me to build alliances, impose sanctions, manage international relations, and conduct intelligence operations. On the military side, I could design custom units and develop armed forces based on available resources and strategic needs. Research covered a huge range of technologies, opening new options for both civilian and military development. The ambition and depth were impressive, but the rough presentation and uneven execution keep it in the mediocre tier. That's my ranking of grand strategy wargames. The standout titles weren't just about conquering territory, they were about building and sustaining an empire. Thanks for watching.